You have a creature living in your home right now that descended from one of the most dangerous predators on Earth. It sleeps on your bed. It begs for your food. It follows you from room to room like it would die without you. And at some point in the last 30,000 years, its ancestors were wolves. Not metaphorically, literally. The same animal that ran in packs, brought down elk, and tore apart anything that wandered too close to its cubs somehow became the thing that cries when you leave for work. And here's the part that changes everything. Nobody planned it. No ancient human woke up and decided to build a dog. No breeding program, no intentional selection, no goal. What actually happened is one of the strangest accidents in the history of life on this planet. And the answer tells you something uncomfortable about how much of the world around you was shaped not by intention, but by things nobody ever meant to do. Let's start at the beginning. Around 20,000 to 40,000 years ago, the relationship between humans and wolves was simple. They competed. Both species hunted the same prey. Both operated in coordinated social groups. Both needed territory. Both needed food. If you were a hunter-gatherer on the Eurasian steppe, a wolf wasn't a companion. It was a rival, sometimes a danger, always something to be wary of. And then something shifted, not because humans changed their behavior toward wolves, because wolves started changing theirs. Here's what scientists now believe actually happened. Ancient humans produced waste, bones, scraps, offal, the leftover parts of whatever they'd killed and eaten. They dumped it outside their camps the same way all humans dispose of what they no longer need. And wolves noticed. Most wolves kept their distance. Their fear response was too strong. Getting close to a human encampment was dangerous, and tens of thousands of years of evolution had wired them to know it. But a small number of wolves were different. Not braver exactly, just slightly less afraid. These particular wolves had a marginally lower fear threshold. They could tolerate being closer to humans without their stress hormones overwhelming them. Close enough to smell the scraps. Close enough to eat. So they did, and they survived better for it. Those wolves bred. Their offspring inherited the same slightly lower fear response. Those offspring got a little closer, ate a little more, bred again. Generation by generation, without a single human making a conscious decision, the wolves that were least afraid of people became the wolves most likely to eat, most likely to survive, most likely to pass that trait on. They were domesticating themselves. Nobody invited them. Nobody asked. This sounds like a theory, but in 1959, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev ran an experiment that proved it could happen exactly this way. He took silver foxes, wild animals with no history of domestication whatsoever, and began selectively breeding them. The only criterion was tameness. He didn't select for appearance, not size, not color, not intelligence, not any physical trait at all. Just one thing. Would a given fox tolerate being near a human without panicking? The results were unlike anything science had documented before. Within 10 generations, the foxes were approaching humans voluntarily. Within 20, they were seeking out human contact, wagging their tails. Within 40 generations, roughly the same span of time that separates ancient wolves from the earliest domesticated dogs, something extraordinary had happened. The foxes didn't just behave differently, they looked different. Their ears went floppy, their tails curled upward. Spotted coats appeared where there had been none. Their snouts shortened. Their skulls became rounder. Nobody selected for any of that. It came packaged with tameness, automatically, as if the entire physical profile we associate with domesticated animals was bundled together somewhere beneath the surface, waiting to be unlocked. And in 2014, a team at Cambridge, Adam Wilkins, Richard Wrangham, and Tecumseh Fitch, published a paper that finally explained why. The answer is embryonic. Inside every developing embryo, there is a population of cells called neural crest cells. These cells migrate throughout the body during development, and they build things. They build the adrenal glands, the system responsible for the fear and stress response. They build the pigmentation system that determines coat color. They build the cartilage structure of the ears. They build the bones of the face. All of it, rooted in the same source. When you select for a lower fear response, you are selecting for fewer and less active neural crest cells. And fewer neural crest cells produces a cascade. Less adrenal reactivity, less pigmentation, spotted coats emerge, less cartilage in the ear, it droops, less bone density in the face, the snout shortens, the skull rounds. Every single physical feature we associate with domesticated animals is a side effect of selecting for one thing: a calmer nervous system. The researchers called this domestication syndrome. And once you understand it, the animal in your house looks completely different. Every floppy ear is a record of lower cortisol. Every spot is a record of a neural crest cell that never quite formed. The entire body is built from tameness. But here's what nobody talks about. The wolves that drifted toward those ancient camps weren't just surviving better. They were becoming useful. Their presence near human settlements meant they detected things humans couldn't. A predator approaching from the tree line in the dark. A rival group moving toward camp. Something wrong at the edge of the firelight. And they made noise. Not because they were protecting the humans, because they were protecting their food source. But the effect was the same. Humans who tolerated these semi-tame wolves nearby had a warning system they hadn't built and didn't pay for. Humans who chased them off didn't. Over thousands of years, the groups that were comfortable with these animals survived in slightly higher numbers, passed that tolerance on to their children. Evolution was selecting on both sides of the relationship simultaneously. Then the relationship deepened, and it stopped being accidental. Once humans recognized that these animals could track scent, chase prey over distances no human body could sustain, coordinate with a hunting group in ways no other animal would, they started actively using them. The earliest archaeological evidence of what came next is staggering. A burial site in northern Israel, dated to roughly 12,000 years ago, contains an elderly human skeleton and a puppy. The person's hand was resting on the dog. That is not utility. That is grief. At some point across those thousands of years of accidental proximity, something happened between these two species that had never happened before. They became attached to each other. But the deepest change wasn't behavioral, it was cognitive. In 2002, evolutionary anthropologist Brian Hare, then at Harvard, ran a series of experiments testing how different animals interpret human social cues. The test was straightforward. A human hides food under one of two containers and then points at the correct one. Can the animal follow the gesture? Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, sharing 98% of our DNA, largely fail this test. They look at the hand, at the face, at the arm. They don't understand what pointing means. Dogs pass it almost automatically. Even puppies with no training, raised with minimal human contact, follow pointing gestures the first time they see them. And here's the critical part. Wolves raised by humans, wolves that grew up around people from birth, don't do this. It isn't about familiarity with humans. It is a cognitive adaptation that emerged through domestication itself. Somewhere in the tens of thousands of years of living alongside people, dogs evolved a specific ability to read human communicative intent, to understand that when a person gestures towards something, it means something, and you should look. No other animal on Earth has this. Not chimpanzees, not dolphins, not elephants, just dogs. Hare called it the product of co-evolution. Humans didn't simply shape dogs. Dogs shaped humans right back. Think about what that actually means. For most of human prehistory, we hunted with spears, traps, and the raw limits of what a human body could endure. Then we had a partner that could outrun almost any prey animal alive, that could track a scent across miles of terrain, that could coordinate with a hunting group in ways no other species on Earth would. The advantage was enormous. Groups hunting alongside dogs ate better, traveled farther, survived longer. Some anthropologists now argue that the domestication of dogs was not a footnote to human prehistory. It was a turning point, one that shaped which groups of early humans survived the Pleistocene and which ones didn't. All of it, tracing back to a few wolves that were slightly less afraid, that crept toward a campfire, that nobody invited. Here is the uncomfortable version of this story. You didn't choose dogs. Dogs chose you. Their ancestors made a calculation, not consciously but biologically, that proximity to humans was worth the risk. And they were right. There are now more than 1 billion dogs on Earth, the most numerically successful large carnivore in the history of this planet, living on every continent, fed, sheltered, and protected by the species they chose to move toward. From the outside, it looks like humans domesticated wolves. From inside the data, it looks like the opposite. The wolves that made themselves useful to humans survived in extraordinary numbers. The wolves that didn't, the ones that held their distance, that kept their fear, that stayed wild, many of them went extinct. The friendliest wolves inherited the earth. And tonight, when the animal that descends from those wolves curls up next to you, it is carrying 30,000 years of that original choice in its body. Every floppy ear, every spotted coat, every time it looks at your face trying to understand what you mean. This was never a story about humans taming the wild. It was a negotiation. One species offering proximity in exchange for food, the other offering food in exchange for protection. Neither side planned it. Both sides kept showing up. And somewhere in the middle of all that, something happened that neither of them expected. They became each other's family.